It's a high-tech conversation
and a low-tech topic.
live on the World Wide Web via Zoom. Bench Talk 101.
So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bench Talk 101. This week, we've got a nice topic for you. It's all about all the books on tool making and woodworking that I guess your favorite books, the ones that you like to read, the ones that you like to refer to. So, without further ado, I think we'll ask Mitch to talk about his favorite book.
Well, thank you very much. My favorite book, not of all time, but certainly of the moment, the one I'm reading, is The Genius of Japanese Carpentry. And it's basically a guide to how temples are made. I'll put the ISBN number in the chat later on if anyone's interested in it. It's got a great introduction on the temples themselves, woodworking in Japan. It talks about the master carpenters over there, the tools used, so a good range of tools covered in there. Plenty of other things, but what was most interesting to me, which I haven't got to that section yet though, is the joint making and Japanese joints. I'll just try and find some of the complex ones in there to give you an idea. And you can imagine building a temple, there are quite a few joints. And when I get a chance and when my hands are up to it, I may build one out in the garden. So you never know. I might give up YouTube and just build myself a temple. So it's got plenty of plates in there. Most of them are black and white. This book's from 1989. It does have a few colour ones in there as well. Definitely worth finding if you can. It's a very good read. Let me find the more complex joint if I can. Of course I can't now, I'm on air trying to do it. But there is a joint between the top of the uprights and I guess what you'd call the ring beam and the actual roof section itself, which makes it earthquake proof. Basically the roof just floats on there. It's not joined directly by any mechanical means. It's just sitting on these, what they call, oh no, what is it? Brackets. And there's an idea of one of them there. Let's find a more complex one. There we go. So basically look a bit like flowers. They sit on top of the columns. All loose joinery, and then the roof structure sits on top of those. So it's a fantastic book. I'll leave it at that. If you're interested in Japanese woodworking and temples, etc., that's a great one to have a look at.
Thanks, Mitch. I know you're a big lover of Japanese joinery. Matthias.
Yep. Well, same as when we were talking favorite tools, I sort of made a mental shortlist. A couple of books that I really enjoyed were, it's the Understanding Wood Finishing by Bob Flexner. I learned quite a lot, and from that one, as I did from Hoadley's Understanding Wood. Both of them demystified a number of things for me. A book that were mentioned a couple of weeks ago as well, Ron Hawk's The Perfect Edge. That's one I refer to a lot. But I think my current favorite for, how shall I put it, for just general usefulness in a very nice and compact format is Robert Waring's The Essential Woodworker. I will not even attempt to pretend that I have mastered even a fraction of what's mentioned in it, but I feel that this is a compact and very clearly written, clearly explained, very succinct book on all the essentials of basic joinery. So it's really there are many other books. I've been an avid reader since I was 4 years old. So I love books of all sorts, shapes, and descriptions. But in my woodworking library, I think that one is my favorite. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Matthias. Sounds like a brilliant read. Jim.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I won't do that one because we've heard about that. We're going to have that off from Tom. So I had to put that up on the basis that everybody would just shoot me if I didn't. And there's a second book that I'm not going to put up, which is that one. And I'm going to put it up because Bill and Sarah would kill me. And I thought they'd be here tonight. Otherwise, it is absolutely fantastic. If you're into plane making and you can make a plane that size as a starting plane, then you can make any size. It is absolutely brilliant. It's illustrated by the delectable Sarah in hundreds of photographs, all one after the other at a single stage of build of Bill doing a little Billy, to the point, and the photographs are absolutely stunning. And you can get these from you get these directly from Sarah or Bill at Bill's website, and definitely worth the investment. I can't remember exactly how much they are. It's around about the 20-something pound mark, 25 pound, but this one's particularly my favorite because it's signed. So that was the books that I'm not going to do. And the other book that I'm not going to do is the one that's always on my shoulder here, which is Goodman and the Plane Makers of Great Britain. So the one I'm going to do, I'm going to have to try to hold up. And the reason
the Tool Collector's Bible.
Yeah, but this is without doubt, if you're into tools at all, then this is the book you need, because David Russell collected almost every single type of tool from lots of generations, right the way through from cavemen, I think, through to modern day. I do even believe Bill Carter is in here. But just to give you an example of some of the beautiful plates inside, it has page after page after page. You need a Dias for this thing, one of them lecterns. But there's a whole section on makers separately. This is the Norris section, and you've got a whole section on Holtzapfel. Not just planes. There are some beautifully illustrated versions of almost every single type of pad brace. And right at the very back, you have a section on miniature planes and ornamental planes, then marks of every single iron. Let me just see, some of these are absolutely beautiful.
Jim, I think you've just pushed the eBay price up.
These are actually very easy to come by relatively cheaply. When I first bought this, I was lucky to get it for, I think it was £110, but I've seen them going quite cheaply now, certainly at David Stanley's auctions, somebody's selling them there, discounting down to the sort of £80-90 mark. But as you can see, it's just tool after tool after tool, and the history of all of them, the dates and so on. So if you're into tool collecting from anywhere in the world, it goes from USA, Britain, continental Europe, 100% recommend this book if you've got the energy to lift it, because it is quite thick. So that's I would say that's probably my favorite book. Good for resting on.
Thanks, Jim. I'm not sure they'll be as cheap as you say now.
No, well,
now you've told everyone.
Next 10 minutes it won't be, no.
Andy Tuckwell.
Yeah, hi. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Favorite book. It's even harder than favorite tool, because there's just so many to choose from. And you know, do you want books about how to do woodworking, how to make stuff, how to extend your skills? Well, frankly, you know, you could do worse than just have a book like that frankly tells you loads of information, you know, more than you'd never need. But let's not do that, because like Jim says, you know, those are books not to do. So I'm going to talk about catalogues, because if you do want to learn about tools and when they appeared and which sort of tools cost more than others, and what were the particular features that marked one tool out from another, you need to go to catalogues. And I'll just wave one for now, which was one of the first really nice catalogues that I bought, the 1938 Marples, just before it all went wrong in World War II, when the range of tools was huge, when there are pages of amusing pictures, but there's the details of dozens and dozens of variations, tools in every size, weight, tools for woodworking, tools for iron molding. But this is a rare book. This is hard to find. A copy just sold on eBay for £71. And sometimes, you know, the tool catalogues that you want, you know, they're a bit tatty, they're difficult to refer to, and they can be a bit, you know, sort of falling apart, like this 1928 Marples, or this 1908, I think, Tysax, or even this really good hundreds of pages nurse catalogue. I keep it in a plastic bag because the pages are all separate. Fortunately, there is an answer. So I'm not going to recommend one book. I'm going to recommend the International Tool Catalogue Library. Go back 10 years or thereabouts. There were a few scans of catalogues available online. There was Rose Tools that had a handful. There was the Gary Roberts had a few on his website. The Tools and Trades History Society had a few more that Brian Reed had scanned. But enter Mark Stansbury, tool collector extraordinary. Started off on his blog spot talking about trowels. Not many people collect trowels. I think he was perhaps talking to himself for a while. But what he's done is build up an accessible catalogue where he's gathered together everything that was available online, every catalogue that was digitized by Google and Microsoft when they were competing to scan the world's libraries. And it's anyone can contribute. All those catalogues that I've shown you, I've scanned, I've shared through Mark. They're all available online. It's all at the Internet Archive. And currently there are 5,645 items in there. It is an immense, wonderful research resource. It's the place to go to get the answer to what the hell is this in my hand here? Or if I was a millwright looking for a chisel, why would my chisel look different from a cabinet maker? What was the longest size of handsaw you could buy in 1900? You know, there's millions of questions and answers where you can find the answers there. So I'll put the URL in the comments, but you know, fill your boots. It's all there. You can read them online. You can download everything, and it's you know, there's no charge. The work has been done, and I urge anyone that's got any catalogues that aren't already featured in there, scan them, upload them, let the world share. Sermon over.
Thank you, Andy. That's going to be a brilliant resource. The link to that will be in the YouTube description.
Yeah.
Richard Hughes.
Hello. Hi. So I have here Woodwork Joints by Charles Hayward. I found this little book in a second-hand bookstore, and I think it's really useful. It contains a clear explanation of how to cut joints of all sorts, and that's all it is. It's just a good reference book for how to cut woodwork joints. Not artistic or inspirational. It's just useful, and I like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Ian Lambert. Sorry, before we get on to Ian, Stephen Pray.
There we go. My types of books that I collect are, it depends on what project I'm working on. A lot of my research deals with 1840s or earlier tools, how they were used, and looking for references that I can use as documentation, say, this is what we would have had if we're doing this kind of task at Sutter's Fort in early California history. And Hammer in Hand is one of my favorites because it just gives a great description of the Dominy workshop and the types of tools that they were used and the tools that, and what the tools look like. But that's not the book I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about one of the questions that we get asked at the fort is, where are your stone tools? And I kind of chuckle because no, we're not primitive pre-Bronze Age or anything like that. We're using tools that either are made by people for their use as part of their training or hand-downs from parents. I'm going to take my glasses off. And one of those books that I've been looking for years is some of the English carpentry books that, and I just happen to have a Carpenter's Guide by Nicholson. And this is the 1825 edition. And it has, let's see. Oh, we're there and there. These are just some of the plates in there. But if you want to build a church, it gives you all the steps necessary to build a church out of wood. And it's also a textbook. It asks questions. It has in the back, what I have to do for folks is show them that these are not primitive people who in the 1840s, they've got math, they've got how to figure out angles, and I've got a reproduction of a 1795 Miller's Guide and how you build a sawmill or any kind of mill, the joinery and so on. So these are the types of books that I use a lot in our research and showing people at Sutter's Fort that we are talking about very sophisticated at the journeyman or master level are the people that are coming out here to California. So that's it for me. Oh, one more piece. Tucked inside the book was a program of one of the previous owners. It's fairly fragile, so I don't want to do too much funding. But what's more important is he took this book to a recital or a church service and started doing calculations on a project. And he then used this as a bookmark inside the book. So it was like provenance. And so it gets stored in the book and travels with it. And so it's really interesting. It gives you that insight into somebody's mind from whenever age this book, it could have been the 1950s. FYI, I did purchase this in Ipswich, in England, and that was part of the 200 pounds of books and tools that I brought home from our trip back in 1993 or 94. So anyway, I'm done.
Cheers, Stephen. It's just occurred to me that I completely forgot to mention at the start that if you'd like to present a book, pop your name in the chat So any of those of you who are new today that haven't joined us before, that's how it normally works. So if you have brought a book along with you, just pop your name in the chat like everyone else has been. That brings us on to Ian Lambert then.
Hi. Am I there, folks? Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Two books from the late 70s, which gave me different types of inspiration at the time. There's Mike Dunbar's Windsor chair making. Now, I wasn't specially interested in Windsor chair making, but what did inspire me was his last chapter, which was about old tools. And at that point in the 70s, I had no idea about old tools at all. I wanted nice, new, shiny tools. But that opened my eyes to a whole lot of possibilities. And the one tool in there that I really like and I use whenever I can, often in unconventional ways, is the draw knife. I really like using draw knives. So it wasn't about chair making so much for me as about an introduction to the idea of old tools and actually saving old tools. So I have quite a collection of molding planes, which I don't use, and I do need to really pass on. They're all in nice condition, but it was this feeling that old tools needed to be looked after and kept for the next generation as well. The other book that inspired me from that era was Drew Langsner's Country Woodcraft. And I just liked the simplicity and the clarity of it, actually. And I did make something out of this. At the time, my sister had got some goats, which she was milking. And Langsner had spent time, I think in Switzerland, learning part of his trade. And in the book, there's a Swiss milking stool, which is a one-legged stool that you strap round your sort of hips. So then you use your two legs and the one peg to sit while you're milking. And it stays with you when you move on to the next animal. And I did some rather, because I was young at the time, I did some rather silly pictures where I was wearing it the wrong way around and things like that. So you can imagine what that looked like. I'm not going to show you those. So both of these from the 70s I found inspirational in different ways. And I think Lost Arts Press are about to republish Country Woodcraft. That's me.
What a great book. I think we're starting a trend here, just great books that I haven't read yet. Bruce O.
My first book is probably the book I referred to the most. It's the Leonard Lee's, that's Leonard Lee Valley, The Complete Guide to Sharpening. And I was looking for it this morning, and then I remembered I loaned it to my nephew. So I'm sorry I don't have the second book is just shameless braggery. And for that, I apologize, but it's Kitchen Think, it's backwards, I'm sorry, by Nancy Hiller. And my kitchen's in it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
That's awesome, Bruce. Richard Arnold.
Hi, everybody. As usual, Jim stole my thunder a little bit with the Village Carpenter, so we'll leave that one out. I expect that's quite a favourite amongst everybody. First one that I'm going to talk about is, again, Jim may have mentioned it, but I just thought it might be interesting to see the state of this. I'm not ashamed of it. This is probably one of my most loved books and most used book. It is British Playmakers by William Goodman, Bill Goodman, and this was the third edition. And I can't recall how many years I've had this, but I can recall buying it. it was my first ever meeting with Roy Arnold. I don't know whether anybody of you are aware of Roy Arnold, but he was one of the first big tool collectors and dealers in the 70s and 80s, and he had a shop in Needham, I think it's Needham Market, and he sold books and some tools, but mainly books about woodworking. And as a very young man, I walked in there one Saturday morning and said I'd like to buy a copy of Goodman, and he sold me that. And it was a bit of a terse character, was Roy Arnold, but I also said, have you got any books on sash window making? And he said, well, I've only got one, but he said, why are you interested in sash window making? I said, I'm a joiner, I want to make some sash windows. And from that day on, we were quite good friends. As soon as he realised I was actually interested in making something and I was genuinely interested, he took more of a shine to me. The back of this book also has got numerous stickers in it. They're a record of many years of going to David Stanley auctions, and they're all the major purchases I made in David Stanley auctions over the years. I keep those in the back of the book. Second sort of book or booklets I wanted to talk about were, again, very, very battered, in a terrible state really when you look at them. But these two little booklets here helped me enormously when I started my career as a joiner. I found them in the bottom of my grandfather's tool chest, and one was called Door Making for Carpenters and Joiners, and the other one was Window Making for Carpenters and Joiners. The author was, we don't know who he was, basically, but I learnt all I really needed to know about door and window making from these two little booklets. And I showed them over the years to various people, and they said, well, where can I get a copy? And I said, unfortunately, I don't know. I said, I've never seen them for sale. And people were forever pestering me to, where can I get some? I didn't know. And I tried various methods of getting them republished to no avail, until I met Chris Swartz once at the European Woodworking show, showed them to him and said, you know, I think these are really quite important. Is there any chance that you'd be interested in republishing them? And he jumped straight at the chance, and within 2 months they were published and out for sale. I had actually found some better copies on the internet of the two books because they were in such a fragile state, and I gave the copies to Chris to keep. Actually, I said, you can keep these if you'll republish it. But when he'd finished scanning them all and republishing them, he very kindly sent them away to a bookbinder and had them bound up into 2 little bound copies. So these are Lost Art Press original publications, one only. Nobody else in the world has got these, and I'm very proud of them. They are a complete one-off. Thank you very much, Chris. And that's me, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. I love reading that window making and door making book. It's probably given me more information than I can get from anywhere else in one small read. Rick, apparently I work for you, but you don't pay me.
Just quick footnote, quick footnote to what Richard was saying. If you're really lucky, you'll have the Lost Art Press reprint from Richard's copies, but you might just spot the 1977 editions that Argus Press put out. Same text, same pictures, same content, but the scans are better in the Lost Art Press one, and the binding's nicer. But if anyone wants to get every edition of these wonderful little booklets, that's the target to go for. Thank you.
Very rare, though. I've very rarely seen those.
They were a few years apart buying those.
Yeah.
All right. So my book that I want to offer is ideal for someone like myself who isn't really great at reading. So I have a picture book. It's by Andre Roubaud. It's the Book of Plates. And I really get a kick out of just looking at these strange pictures that I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what they're for. Some of them just blow my mind. And my favorite picture I'm going to show you. I'm pretty sure that's designed for a toilet. So it's got a book of everything, like the Plate 11, the book on the Roubo bench came from this book. I don't believe it's still in print, so you'll have to find someone who doesn't want theirs, which is going to be hard. Yeah, that's, I guess, probably my favorite book.
Thanks, Rick. Mikkel.
Yeah, we had now a lot of technical books, I believe. And I also have a shelf full of these, like the Lost Art Press collection of the Woodworker magazine, which is, in my opinion, a treasure chest for all kind of information when you do a lot of hand tool woodworking. But I chose a different book to show this tonight, which is in a different way. It's more, let's say, philosophical or inspiring. It's called The Lost Carving by David Easterly. And it's the a story of a carver who is hired to go to Britain to a palace where a historic carving was damaged by a fire. And the original carving was by some historic grandmaster of carving. And so this carver is hired to go there and restore the old carving, which was damaged by the fire. And he had no information, just some old pictures, and he had to reconstruct everything and the technique, actually, how the carving was done. And so the book is the story about, on the one hand, about the carving itself, so how came the carving to be, and then about the carver who goes there and kind of his story to reconstruct the carving and what it does to his mind and what's going on in this year. So it was not so much a technical book about woodworking, but more about the inspiration of the artwork, and it was very interesting. So I can recommend that as well.
Thanks, Mikkel. I'm just trying to figure out who's next. So it's Tom Brill. Tom, you may have to unmute yourself.
I was going to say, Chris Swartz, he's costing me an awful lot of money with his books, and I've just bought a couple more now. But one thing is, it's not a book, but it's a magazine. I just really like the fact that someone's doing a magazine on hand tool woodworking and just focusing on old crafts and things. And there's actually someone making, I think, stave baskets or some sort of baskets. And I spoke to him on Instagram, and he's sort of one of the only very few makers now of doing that sort of basket. But the one thing I wanted to talk about was this. It's the Shell book of country crafts. And it's probably one of the first woodworking books ever I was actually given. And I think this is from sort of around late 60s. But I just love some of the illustrations. As an artist, personally, I love some of the drawings and stuff in it. And I just found it such a fascinating book of not just woodworking, but country crafts and things. And, some of the pictures of tools and stuff, little illustrations of old tools and Cooper's tools, and the book's full of them. And there's things that you just wouldn't think about now, because they're sort of crafts that have become kind of obsolete, like crate making for crates before metal ones came into play. And I just find it really kind of humbling, something that's part of English heritage and stuff, and in a book form, that's something that's sort of been lost. And it's, I don't know, I like books. I have a lot of books, and I was really taken with that one. Of course, I was going to say Village Carpenter, but I think that's the go-to for everyone, isn't it? The only other one that would be on par with that would be the Wheelwright Shop. and I found that a very good read, and it sort of reminds me a bit of The Village Carpenter. But I think overall that always been my favourite book, because it sort of takes you that particular time, doesn't it? Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. And we'll move over to Daryl.
Oh, okay. I was surprised that the book that I always pick up, it hasn't been mentioned yet. This is Mike Dunbar's Restoring, Tuning, and Using Classic Woodworking Tools. It's everything about how to sharpen and use everything from saws, chisels, planes, braces, scrapers. Here's one, toothing planes. And I referred to this, or well, I did an awful lot when I was first starting to use old tools, and it's great. And it's another one by Dunbar. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thanks, Daryl. That was very brief. We'll move on to Melvin.
Hey,
Melvin, we can't hear you very well.
What?
We can hear you now.
So I have to get close to my phone. All right. The Unknown Craftsman by Suetsu Yanagi, which is a very philosophical, very non-practical book.
Not sure what's going on there, Melvin. We can't really hear you very well at all.
I think your mic volume is just extremely low.
Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
So it's the headphones. All right, we'll do that again. The Unknown Craftsman by Suetsu Yanagi, which is a philosophical book about Eastern philosophy of beauty, and it's, for example, the philosophy that inspired George Nakashima mostly. So I found it very interesting. But another thing I want to mention, which I haven't even attempted reading, a friend of mine found a full pallet of these in a building that was torn apart, and it's an old book about mill making, mill building. Of course, in old German. It's from 1792, and it's direct reprint, so it has all this old, unreadable typeface. But the cool thing is, there's 10 full-size, unfoldable plates of copper type stuff pictures, and they're really beautiful and really interesting about mill making. So I thought maybe Stephen would be interested in that stuff if he doesn't already know it. I don't know how famous it is or if it's ever been translated, but this is direct 18th century German, so I haven't even tried reading it because probably even I won't understand it. But that's another fun one.
Thanks, Melvin.
Never have too much time.
Thank you. Noel.
Hi. Well, I suppose it's maybe more nostalgic, is the series of books that I was taught at school at secondary school, CSE Woodworking. So it's Woodwork Theory by P.F. Lye. And they're a great series of little books. It takes you from everything from seasoning wood to all the different tools, and it's maybe just more a nostalgic thing for me, but that's basically it.
Thanks, Noel.
Okay.
We're over to Sean in Ireland.
Hey, yo. I'm another big fan of The Essential Woodworker, so I won't wave that around. I was a few minutes late, so I apologize if it was already mentioned, but The Anarchists tool chest, which is insanely popular, was a formative book for me, and it's one I probably go back and read once a year. Not so much because it's the greatest technique book in the world, but there's kind of two books I like. The book I go into for the nitty-gritty detail, and the book I read because it gets me enthusiastic again. And I kind of go back to the well on that one an awful lot. But the two I brought along that haven't been brought up yet is, first of all, Salomon's Dictionary of Woodworking Tools. This book is incredible. There are so many tools in it I had never heard of before. I pretty much just pick this up every couple of days, pick a random page and read. I'm a particular junkie for drill bits. There's all sorts of things in here I never knew existed before I picked this book up, which will keep me happy hunting samples down for years to come. But a lot of the real value I'm finding is when you read why this weird bit existed, what's the problem it was trying to overcome that the other bits didn't, you know, and that will give you clues on techniques. It'll give you ideas for, oh, that's why I'm having a problem doing this. That's why using my standard auger bit and end grain is such a pain. And I've learned an awful lot just by randomly leafing through this. So I found it to be fantastic. The other one, which is great and brings us back to the Lost Art Press again, is we've been talking a lot about kids and woodworking in recent times. And I really enjoyed going through Grandpa's Workshop, which is another Lost Arts Press volume. It was originally translated from French. The storyline is a little bit adventurous, perhaps for some parents' tastes and places. So I'd advise giving it a quick read through and deciding if you want to skip any of it. But it's great, and it's a really entertaining read, even for the adult who's reading it. And yet again, it being from more of a French tradition and a background, there's lots of stuff you'll probably learn along the way. So if you'd like to be able to pick up a woodworking book and read it with your kids on your lap, strongly recommend it. That's it for me.
Well, we'll go over to Julian then.
Hi. Well, Andy mentioned catalogues, so there's another one. And of course, we all know that one. But more seriously, we had Brendan talking about James Krenov's fingerprints the other week. And I bought a copy and just absolutely fascinated and staggered that Krenov, whose mother fled the Russian Revolution, gave birth to him in Siberia, moved to China, moved onwards to Alaska, and then he ended up going to Malmsten's workshop in Stockholm and finally back to the US. It's quite an incredible journey and just a stunning biography. I love biography, so a great book for me, and hopefully other people will enjoy it as well. Okay.
Another one to add to my reading list.
More pocket money to
It's
spend.
getting very long. I think I'll have to put a reading list in the YouTube description so I can find it again. Great. Over to Greg Ricketts.
Hey, good evening, Shrenik. Hey, first of all, it's pretty humbling to be amidst all these professional joiners and cabinet makers and woodworkers. I'm afraid I'm more of a student of the tool than I am of the wood, but maybe someday I'll get there. As such, I'm going to echo somebody's earlier comment about studying the tools and the importance of catalogs. And so I brought an example. I have chosen the unusual rabbit hole of collecting Fulton hand planes, which were sold by Sears and Roebuck beginning in 1904. And they were made by most of the US major manufacturers, and some were supplied by some of the European makers. Kuntz made some. Anyways, so in the process, I have collected a little over 220 Sears and Roebuck catalogs, both electronically and hard copy. Fortunately, I only had to really dig into about 100 of them to cover the lifespan of the Fulton tools. But it's been a lot of fun looking through the catalogs and just seeing not just hand planes, but all the different tools from the era. And of course, the prices, are just rather stunning. And I think a commentary on history as well. So one other one is a modern publication that has been really, really helpful. Sargent and Company made the majority of the Fulton hand planes. And so Don Wilwall's book, Sargent Hand Plane Reference Guide, has been indispensable in sorting out the ages of these tools. So certainly hats off to Don and all the contributors that made that book possible. It's been really helpful.
Cheers there, Greg. I love that you've got the camera angle out to show the other books. Who are we over to next? Travis.
I think I'm on now. So it was really hard to pick this. I'm primarily a chair maker, so I have probably every single chair making book there is, and a couple of multiple copies of them, just because I'll find them cheap and I give them away to people who come by. But this is the one that probably started me down the rabbit hole of chair making. Was Peter Galbraith's Chair Maker Notebook from Lost Art Press. Again, another. This is the one that I've turned to a lot to reference, but also is the one that made me definitely fall in love with chair making. Even though I don't follow everything he does, it was the one that started. And then my the book that's helped me out in the last year or so in this pandemic is, of course, the Make a Chair from a Tree that I picked up for $2 a couple of years. Even then, I believe it was running at $100, but this used bookstore didn't know what they had. So I took it from them. And I don't know if in the past year or so, I've made probably 15 or 20 of these kinds of chairs and sold them during the pandemic. They've just taken off, and then been teaching classes lately based on the methods taught in this book. Then this year, I think I've already made and sold 5 chairs, and then I'm still back ordered about 2. So this one definitely has been well worth the $2 that I spent on it. I guess that's it, though.
Welcome, Travis. We're looking forward to hearing from you in maybe next month, I think.
Yes, I think, or July, is it June or July, something like that, I think. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. I'm trying to get used to the controls on Zoom, so I'm not very good at that. And hopefully by then I'll have something to hold the iPad here, so I don't have to hold it in my hand as well.
Amazing, amazing. We'll move on to Will Graham.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All
Loud
right.
and clear.
I'm relatively new and weak at the hand tool things, but this book by Jim Chopin, the Toolbox Book, and I picked it up, can't remember, I got it, it's either Lee Valley or Amazon. And I was trying to figure out, I like the picture on the cover, to tell you the truth. And I've been going through it and reading it, and it just blew me away what you can do with hand tools on this book. And it's kind of got me going down the rabbit hole. That was my first step into it. But I think the book that cover to cover, this is a reference book. To me, it's looking like it's in reverse image. Can you guys read that okay?
Yeah, it's the right, it's okay, it's the right way around
for us.
Okay, for me it's backwards. This is my constant guide. It stays very close to my bench. And as I'm learning how to sharpen, I dig into it. And you know, it's an amazing book with amazing detail. I love this book, and I recommend it to anybody starting off with hand tools. Is get this book, and I think there's another one out by Leonard Lee or somebody like that about sharpening, because it's changing the way I'm actually thinking about sharpening it. And I just finished this off earlier this morning. It's a scrap metal chisel, a Charles Buck cast steel. I think that means something, but I wanted a wide chisel, and I just got this kind of up to where it's scary sharp. I have to build a handle for it, up on it. But those are the ones that I like. I'm actually also not quite half, about 40% of the way through the Anarchists. I love the style of writing on that. It just gives a really good top overview. But the best thing about it is the sense of humor and a bit of the self-deprecation that he goes through. I like the writing style. So that's me.
Cheers, Will. Sounds like Chester's finally managed to pick one favorite from his library. Your turn, Chester.
Actually, I pulled 4, but I don't think any of you have heard of any of them. And that's probably just as well. The first one is from 1927, and it's Good Practice in Construction. all of the books I chose aren't on tools. It's on construction and furniture making. This one, Good Practices in Construction, is, like I said, 1927, Philip Knobloch. The reason I like this book is that it gives details on building windows, all different, and it has phenomenal. Let's see if I can figure out the best way to do this. But you have double hung casement windows. This is masonry work in here, but it gives full details on different types of windows, double hung sash windows, on the how they attach to masonry buildings as well as framed buildings. So this one in particular is on construction techniques and proper techniques from the 1920s. Then the second book that I pulled is Shop Theory, which is from the Henry Ford Trade School. And the nice thing about this is that it tells you shop theory in machinist tools and all different methodologies and types of using tools, measuring different things, layout and things like that. So another really good book, and it's from the Henry Ford Trade School. And the last book I'll share with you is Modern Furniture and Fittings by Hooper, and it's an English book printed in London. And it's the amazing thing about it, and the reason I like these books and I go to them, is that you can go in here and it has bedroom furniture, wardrobes of various types, boardrooms, conference rooms, bureaus, secretaries, and they have the blueprints, the drawings in them for the techniques to building them, and the joinery, and for architecture, millwork, furniture, and it's a phenomenal paneled libraries. But it gives you the photographs, and then it gives you the drawings that have all of the necessary things that you need to figure out how these different constructions are done in carcass work and things like that. So it's a phenomenal book, reference book. And those are sort of the ones that I go to. The only other thing is Wallace Nutting's Furniture Treasury. I have a whole probably 75 books on furniture. And the reason is that these books give you really great information on the construction, how to veneer, book matching. Just phenomenal information in them. And I've been collecting these for about 30 years, different books on them. But this is really a good one. But I have Aronson's and several others. So that's it. Not tools, but actually furniture.
Thanks, Chester. Over to Scott.
Hi, guys. I found this difficult. I'm a bit of a junkie for, I can still see Chester. I must be in.
We can see you, Scott.
Okay, sorry. I found this quite hard because I'm a bit of a junkie for reference books on joinery and carpentry, or carpentry and joinery, and had to pick just one. I have the whole set of joinery and carpentry books. I don't have the whole set, as Sean knows. I've still to buy the first edition of the first book of it. But this one here is volume 4 of Joinery and Carpentry. It's a New Era book by Hancock, Corkhill and Dowsett, which is edited by Richard Greenhaw. Really old book. I think it's 1920s. And the reason I chose this one out of all of them is it's got one of my favorite tools in it, which is the very, very last section. And that is the humble steel square, and the use of the steel square for everything that you can do in roofs and stairs, all the angles and all the setting out, using a steel square for everything you can do on roofs and squares. Roofs and stairs and stuff like that. So any angle joinery, which is sometimes the most complex, these books are amazing as well, because they also have, as other people have shown as well, they have nice fold out illustrations inside them. So you get beautiful illustrations of roofs and stuff inside and all the construction of them. And I just find that some of the most complex joinery stuff basically revolves around the humble steel square, the roofing square or the rafter square. And the last section in that book just goes through everything from dihedral angles to setting out some of the more complex stuff that you get in roofs. I know they just look like technical drawings to people, but these are the kind of the basics of setting out on roofs and stairs and stuff like that. And I love that section in that book. I use it as reference all the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. I thought I'd squeeze myself in here as well. I'll be the second last before Jim Hendricks, and then we'll wrap up tonight's topic talk. I'm going to talk about this book by W.B. McKay. It's Joinery. This happens to be a metric edition of the book, but there are various editions. This was just the cheapest one I could find. There's a series of books. So there's a brickwork, carpentry, and then the Joinery book. This book, I've been interested in joinery, didn't really know much about it. And I bought this book almost blindly, just having seen a series of the books. I could find PDF copies of older versions of the other books in the series on archive.org, but I couldn't find the Joinery book. So I bought this, and as it's very similar to the book or books that Chester showed, it has got, you know, detailed drawings of the moldings. If I were to go to the door and window, so for example, it's got a section on pivoted sash windows, things that I probably will never make, but I'm still curious about how, and I'm able to just flick through the book. And I'm of a generation, part of why I came up with tonight's talk was because I'm of a generation where we don't read much. We really don't. And you probably all curse about it, that we don't read. And I don't read either. But I find myself referring to books more than I do YouTube and other resources, because if you're trying to find out what something is, you've already read it before. You remember the book, you can quickly flick through, you'll remember something in that book and you'll find it. And you'll find it much faster than you will sitting through an hour-long YouTube video to find the content that you're looking for. It's not necessarily that the content is different. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but it's easier to find. And if the power's out, I've always got this. Right, move over to Jim.
Yes, I wanted to just finish off today. Shrenik, brilliant topic. And we all have books. What's our favorite book? But Richard woke my mind up to a book that I think was briefly mentioned by Tom, and that's the Joseph Moxon book, The Mechanical Exercise. Now you can buy a copy. This is 1703, Tormara Press with Gary Roberts. But that suddenly reminded me when Richard mentioned David Stanley of this little sticker, because the oldest book that I've got, I thought was 1703, because I managed to find this in a pile of books, and it is actually one of the original prints by Joseph Moxon, which I thought was from 1703. The printing is all hand printed on one of his presses, which is currently in the Ashmolean Museum. I mentioned it on a number of bench talks, just the amazing aspect of finding this book. But I know there's quite a few people here that probably haven't seen it. And when I got it at David Stanley, it was in a pile of books. I can't remember. It's probably about 30 quid or something. But the illustrations are just spectacular. And they're all hand printed with copper plate printing process. And some of the illustrations are absolutely stunning. And the paper is so thick that it's gone through to the back. And when I mentioned this to Gary Roberts, he questioned me about the page numbers, which are at the top. And this would have cost sixpence in I thought 1703, but he said, Jim, that's not the 1703 edition. That's actually the 1670 edition. So this is an original first edition of the pamphlet that it would have come as a pamphlet, like that, and he sold them for anything from a sixpence to a shilling, which in those days was a fortune. And he sold them on street corners. And then in 1703, it was bound into a book called Mechanic Exercises together. So I actually, for the first time ever, made Gary Roberts jealous of having a book. But this is my most treasured book. So I thought I'd end on a bit of real antiquity from 1670. Thanks, Rennick.
Well, I'm going to squeeze in Andy Brown before we end, because I think Andy Brown's probably got a little gem hiding there.
An older one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's bound to.
Go on, Andy.
No, you've done them all. You've had everyone I've got out. Except there's this little nugget here from the Cambridge Technical series. Architectural Building Construction, Jaggard and Drury. This is volume 1. Volume 2 I've just recently got. I found out there's a volume 3, but it's super. It tells you how to build a cottage and how to build a house and how to build a workshop, and it doesn't leave any stone unturned. It's all in there, and that's the cottage it shows you how to build. You know, absolute pure Lego stuff from when I was a kid. That's the sort of stuff you used to build with the Lego kits. And let's just see if I've got a picture of the workshop. And there's the workshop. Just what every street used to have. Absolutely gorgeous. Lovely gates and everything. But in the back, it comes with the full working drawings. Sorry, let me just do this so you can actually see what it shows you. So you've got a full set of plans for the workshop, and then there's a full set of plans for the house. Plans like that you don't really get these days. I'm fortunate enough to work in a house at Market Bosworth, and on the wall are the original plans just like that. And they're absolutely gorgeous details to have. But so there's that one. And just one that's not been mentioned again is Modern Practical Joinery, George Ellis. This is an original copy. And this covers everything. It's a proper treatise on joinery. And there's not a lot that's not in here. In fact, there's even a section on the sliding sash shutter, which a lot of people don't know about. It's when instead of folding shutters on the inside of sash windows, you had 1 or 2 shutters that would be hidden underneath the window board, and you would lift them up vertically to close off the windows. And I've had pleasure of actually doing work on 3 or 4 sets of those, and to actually have a book that you can look at is brilliant reference. But that's a really good book. So anyway, I'll leave you with that. There's loads of others, but crack on. Cheers.
Cheers, Andy. Shame you couldn't top Jim's book there. Well, I think it's been a great evening. I think we've got a massive reading list for everyone to get through. Cheers, everyone. Cheers for a great talk. Thanks for all the books you shared.
Thank you.
To the bench.
Cheers. To the bench.
Bench.
To the bench.